Welcome to the Happy, Healthy Life Podcast with your hosts, Rob and Randy, who reveal the truth, the lies, and confusion about health so that you are no longer the victim to mainstream medical dogma and you are the hero to your own happy, healthy story.
Welcome back to another episode of the Happy Healthy Life Podcast. You guys are going to love this episode right here. I know a lot of times we get into the nuts and bolts of what to do to heal your metabolism. We talk about what to do nutritionally. We talk about exercise, but something that really goes way deep into why you've been choosing the lifestyle habits that you've been choosing, why you've been choosing the foods that you eat, why you like to eat when you know that you shouldn't be doing those things. We're going to dive down into why that's happening, how to overcome that with breath work and trauma expert, Alyse Bacine. So she's here today with us. Alyse, thank you so much for being here with us on the Happy Healthy Life Podcast.
Much. Yes.
How are you today?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
So where are you coming to us from? Because you're obviously not here in Dallas, Fort Worth with us.
I am not. I am actually in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, yes, yeah. the home of the Eagles. We had that conversation the other day.
We did. We're bitter enemies and had no idea. So maybe we can help. We can heal today over that trauma.
It's really funny because my husband always tells my kids that like we're not allowed to like the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm like, that's like we don't want to program like hatred into our children. Yeah. And he's like, no. This is important. This is serious.
Yeah, well, don't worry. We do that over here in Texas. You're not allowed to like the Philadelphia Eagles. So once again, maybe we can have some real healing today for the Cowboys and the Eagles fans.
It's deep inner healing for sure. I will say this, though.
What you got?
You know, the Philadelphia 76ers, you know where they are not this evening?
Where are they not?
They're not playing for an NBA championship this evening like the Dallas Mavericks are. I'm just throwing it out there.
I got on my Mavericks Navy here. I'm prepared. We're on the road tonight. Really excited about the game tonight. I'm sure y'all are very excited in Philly tonight about this.
So excited.
All right. Well, let's talk about the excitement of living a happier, healthier life. We always talk about, people really deserve to be happy, and happy people deserve to be healthy. Yeah. And so you help people do that in a very profound way. So let's talk about that. Just for the listeners, let us know, what is a breathwork trauma expert? What does that even mean? Are you teaching people that they actually should breathe? I mean, what's happening here?
Yeah. So I have been teaching and sharing breathwork for 23 years. So actually more than half my life. I discovered breathwork when I was 19 years old, and it helped me heal and change in many ways that I was really desiring to. So I teach a form of breathwork that helps you heal, grow, and understand things about yourself that you wouldn't normally understand. And obviously I can talk more about that, but, and there's many, many benefits to breath work, and there's many different types of breath work, and we'll get into more of like the one that I teach. And the trauma piece, when we do breath work, our trauma comes up, our unhealed trauma or unreconciled trauma from childhood and even ancestral trauma. So, I also have over a decade of experience as a mental health professional, working as a school counselor. I have a master's degree in counseling psychology, and I worked in the inner city with traumatized children for over a decade. So I have a lot of experience with trauma, and it also just happens to be that thing that I'm gifted at. So I've, coupled my experience and knowledge with my natural ability to just understand it, to create my own methodology of healing trauma, which is a lot around using breath work and the other tools I've created.
Well, let's dive a little even deeper into your background. So, walk us through, how did you get started doing breath work? Because I didn't even know, I know we didn't know that breath work was a thing until really just a few years ago. And this is something that you've been doing for a long time. How'd you get into this?
Yeah. So in 2001, I was a freshman. I was at the end of my freshman year in college, and I was just struggling. I was struggling with anxiety and an eating disorder. And I wanted to know why, because I didn't have anything particularly that I was aware of that could have any major things in my life that precipitated that. So I just was on a journey to understand why and understand what were some things that I could do to help myself feel happier and healthier, right? So I
Yeah.
discovered yoga, first of all, and I started working at a yoga studio. And that really changed my life because I was then exposed to so many different things. They had a store at the yoga studio at the time, and they sold all different kinds of books on healing and, eating healthy. And that's when I became a vegetarian, and I just started like understanding so much more about health. And then, when I was working at the yoga studio, there was a breathwork class there, and I went to it, and nothing even in particular happened that I remember, but I was just drawn to it. And I just knew that I needed to do more of it. And then from that point on, I took every breathworker training that was available. We have an amazing breathwork community here in Philadelphia, and they train breathworkers every year. I did 4 breathworker training programs. I did a teacher training program, and I started to teach groups here in Philadelphia, and I was like 21, 22, teaching groups at yoga studios and stuff like that. And I also had private clients. And then it's something that I always did on the side in some capacity throughout most of my life. So, and I joke because I think I might have mentioned this to you when we talked before. When I started doing breath work, no one knew what it was. And I remember my friends would try to tell other people about it. And I would just be like, please stop. Like, I don't want to talk about this because no one understands and everyone thinks it's crazy. And I'd rather just not talk about it. So now, it's a lot more out there and everyone knows about it. But at the time, no one really understood what it was. So that's how I got into it. And, it's always been a huge part of my life.
Yeah, you were essentially breath work before breath work was cool, right?
Yes,
Yes, you
exactly.
are.
And it was like me and a bunch of like 30 and 40-year-olds, like, in a room, and I was the youngest one there. And it was funny because it was just like this thing where I felt like I belonged there, but I also didn't know how I got there. I should have been at college parties, and I was sitting in a room doing breath work. So
That's so cool. So, tell our audience, for people who are wondering, okay, you've been talking about breath work. Well, what is it? How would you explain what breath work is?
Yes, great question. So the breath, like I said, there are many different types of breath work, and people, in the audience who do yoga or things like that. There's different types of breathing that you do in yoga, and breath work itself is an ancient practice. But the breath work that I teach is called conscious connected breathing. And it's literally the most simple breathing that you can do, but it's very profound and it creates really amazing results. And I've created my own way of doing it and my own methodology around it. So it's the simplest breath. It's literally just inhaling and exhaling through the mouth in a circular pattern with no space between the inhale and the exhale. And the reason why we breathe in and out of the mouth is because you get more air going in that way. So it moves energy. So when we start to breathe, a few things are happening. So first, you are pretty much forcing yourself into the present moment because you can't take a breath in the past and you can't take a breath in the future. So you are in the present moment. And the present moment is the field of infinite possibilities, the quantum field. So you're immediately connecting yourself with the field of infinite possibilities. So you begin to expand what feels possible for you. You start to, go into this state where you're connected to your higher self, you're connected to your creativity, the things that are meant to come through for you, and you start opening up to new ideas, new possibilities, new things that you are capable of that you might not have thought of if you're just kind of going through the same motions every single day. So that's one aspect. And then the second aspect is you're moving energy and you're accessing the subconscious mind. So when we move energy in the body, we give the body a chance to process all of the unprocessed and unhealed emotions that we're holding in the body, because pretty much we as a society have been taught to suppress our emotions. So most people are walking around with a ton of suppressed emotional energy that is just waiting to be processed. That's why people get anxiety. That's why people have depression or otherwise chronic pain or chronic illness. A lot of it is unprocessed emotions. So when we breathe, you give your body and your energy the chance to process the emotions that are sitting there waiting to be processed. And then also a lot of the deeper emotions and deeper things that happen in childhood that are causing you to have certain results in your life are living in the subconscious. And when you breathe, you access the subconscious and you will gain new awarenesses about why you are the way that you are, or certain beliefs that you might be carrying that you weren't aware of, that you were projecting onto your reality or experiencing that you didn't know. So once you have that awareness, then you're able to make different choices and start operating differently. So that's just a quick rundown.
It brings me back to, like, when I got diagnosed with late stage cancer, that emotional wound of losing my father, and speaking from a man's perspective, I didn't want to show any weakness. And so I buried it. And then, of course, 2 years later, I'm diagnosed with a late stage cancer diagnosis. And if you looked at me, I looked very, very healthy. And if you would have asked me, how are you doing with the death of your father? I would have told you everything's good. Yet deep down in my soul, my spirit, my heart, my emotions, I wasn't good. And it finally showed up, and it showed up as cancer. I don't know what you think about that, but that's where it was just taking me right back to that moment. Like, I really wasn't able to do well. And that was 14 years ago.
Yeah,
So.
no, I truly believe that there is an emotional component underneath every single illness.
Yes.
And there's a message that is telling you something that you need to heal, look at, reconcile, or shift. And first it'll show up more subtly, but then, I like to say the universe will hit you over the head with a frying pan if you don't get the message. So, and sometimes that has to be either like an illness or a car accident or something dramatic so you can get the message.
And I think also with God and the universe giving us those messages so many times, the message still keeps on happening over and over and over. I mean, you look at people who do struggle with their weight, and they do go on a diet, and then they gain all the weight back. Or somebody with relationships, for example, somebody's like, oh my God, that was the most traumatic relationship I've ever had. I'm never doing that again. Next thing you know, they're dating the exact same person that they were dating before, because they really didn't go deep and heal these past traumas, heal these past wounds. And as you were talking, there's a lot of people right now are moving into, I don't know if you would call it a movement, where they're choosing things, for example, like plant medicines, whether it's like an ayahuasca, a bufo, or any of these different types of things, to be able to get into, to be able to bypass even the conscious, the subconscious, to really get down deep into those things that, haven't come up ever in their lifetime, even as far back as their birth. And right after that, it sounds like by doing the breath work is a way that you can be able to do that without having to turn, for example, to a plant medicine. Would that be correct?
Yes, I love that you said that, because that's actually one of the first things I thought about breath work when I started it. I was like, and this is in my early 20s, I was like, oh my God, this is what I was trying to accomplish when I took mushrooms. You know what I mean? It really is. It is like that, and you can get that experience. And what I'll say about the whole plant medicine thing, I think it's great, and I think it does help people. And at the same time, what I always say, and I think this is so important, is it's amazing to have those peak experiences, is what I call them, where you have this huge awareness about why you are the way that you are and why things have unfolded the way that they have. But then the thing that really makes a difference is then what are you doing with that information? Because I think a lot of people can have that peak experience and have that shift, but then they just gradually go back to how they were because they're not taking that information and applying it to change in each moment of their lives. And that's what I feel like is the missing piece there, because once you figure out like, oh, this is the thing, this is what I'm doing, this is why I keep recreating it. Like, for example, when you bring up relationships, 100% of relationships that we create, mainly like romantic relationships, are going to be a reflection of your unhealed relationship with your parent that you had the most, friction with. And if you can learn to use the relationship to heal from that, then you're going to grow in your relationship and you'll either better your relationship or you'll find somebody else who's, better. But you have to learn how to utilize the information. And I think that's something that a lot of people are kind of missing, where it's like, I get this and I know why I'm the way I am, but then what are you doing to shift moving forward?
Yeah. So, and that brings up and I know in the breath work that I've done, that I've worked with somebody one-on-one doing breath work. It's like, one of the things that they say that happens is your brain will actually secrete DMT, which is which is a chemical that's secreted literally right before death. And so you'll have these what feel like these out of body experiences. And going through the breath work, I know for myself personally, immediately following the experiences, I'll go straight to my journal and start writing things down that came to me as I was doing that. So I don't forget them. But like you said, that way I can be able to put some legs to what this experience was. So that wasn't just like this euphoric experience, which was like, oh, that feels so good. Okay, what am I going to do with that? What's the action going to be? So for the people that you work with and that you coach through breath work, is there something that you do? Is there like I guess like an integration process that you have with them to be able to ensure that they weren't just having this euphoric experience, but this is something that they can be able to use that's going to make a bigger impact in their life so they really do change?
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing that we do is, once we pinpoint what I call a core wound. So we're really looking at, usually something that happened in early childhood. And it doesn't have to be something that happened. It can just be a relational dynamic. It can be something you did not receive that you needed. It can be, multiple relational dynamics that were damaging to you over time with a parent. And then also I look at what I call birth story, which is the circumstances around your conception up to 3 months old. So we're looking at all of these factors to pinpoint, like, what is this core wound that created this core negative belief that you're playing out, right? And then once we pinpoint that, then there's multiple steps that I take people through to start to shift. And the first one will be creating a relationship with that inner child, that wounded version of you. So essentially that part of you that split off and compartmentalized itself because of the pain that it was feeling. So it's actually a really amazing coping mechanism that humans have, which is to kind of split off a part of us that felt hurt so that we can cope with life. But then eventually what happens is once you get to be an adult, that part that you're not looking at gets mirrored back to you through, like we were talking about, an illness or a relationship or whatever it is. So I teach people to acknowledge and create a relationship with that part of themselves. So that's the first step, is to, instead of compartmentalizing that part of themselves, bringing it in and embracing that version of you and creating a relationship with that part of you. And then once you know what that is, you know that when you're going through life, you know when the inner child is triggered, right? And I always make this joke that most people are walking around as adults but acting like 5 and 6 year olds because they don't realize that their inner child is triggered and is the one driving the bus that would make them, get really angry or overreact or whatever it is, or get super offended. Like, all of that is your inner child. So once you know what that feels like, then you can say, okay, I'm going to address my inner child right now. and give my inner child what he or she needs. And then I can move forward from my present day self. So that's always the first step, is to, what I say is like, just go directly to what's happening instead of trying to mitigate the situation or anything like that. Just go directly to the inner child, because that's who's upset. Give him or her what she needs. And then you can bring yourself back into present time and operate as the version of you that you desire to be. And then when people are triggered, I also have a series of steps that I give them to help them shift their energy. But a lot of what I'm doing is just giving you context to understand what's happening so that you can navigate it and move through it successfully in each moment, so that you don't need me nonstop to like remind you, this is your inner child, this is your I'm not good enough, or this is your abandonment stuff, so that you know that on your own, and then you can navigate that and address it so that you're not moving through life as a triggered 6-year-old or whatever it is.
Amazing. So what would you say? Okay, so for somebody, most of our listeners come to us so that they can be able to improve their metabolic health, so they can heal their metabolism. And so those people are people that are wanting to lose weight, and maybe they've tried diet and exercise programs and they do it for a while, and then they stop it, and then they end up gaining the weight back. But even somebody that was going through one of our metabolic programs, what are some practical things that they could do if they were wanting to begin doing breath work in order to be able to help, get to the cause of why they may be doing what it is they've been doing?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I would just try breath work just to see if it's something that resonates with you, because, I think that would be the first step. And I have a place where you can download a free breathwork session, which I'll share with you. So I would say that would be the first step, is just to try it, but what I would say to anybody who's wanting to improve their gut health and or lose weight is there is an emotional component to it. And I suffered with IBS my entire life. I was born with ulcers in my stomach. I have had chronic stomach issues my entire life. So I know how this connection is directly related. And I'm hyper aware of, like, for me, what it is, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is I'm super empathic, super sensitive. I can feel what other people are feeling, which is why I'm really good at what I do. But it also is not helpful for me when I am, feeling what my husband is feeling downstairs when I'm trying to be on this podcast or work with clients or whatever. And it affects my digestion. Like, I will get heartburn or my stomach will start to hurt. And I have been able to directly relate that to the way I can take on people's feelings. And then I've done a lot of just energetic work to stop doing that and to, separate myself from other people so that my stomach doesn't hurt and so that I don't feel overwhelmed with, digesting other people's stuff. So I think that is a really big thing to look at. So for someone who's wanting to dive into this work, I would look at that. Like, what are you either not digesting that needs to be digested on an emotional or energetic level? And then are you taking on the feelings and emotions of other people? And this is a big one for a lot of women, is feeling overly responsible for the people in your life, people pleasing, also self-abandonment or self-betrayal for other people's needs, or also patterns of enmeshment where you don't even know the difference between you and other people's feelings and your needs and theirs, because of growing up with, parents who didn't know how to model good boundaries and who might have also made you responsible for their feelings in some way. So, there's a lot to disentangle that will directly affect your metabolic health, and also any unprocessed emotions can directly affect your gut health. And I know for me, and most people will say, if you think about it logically, whenever you're nervous, doesn't your stomach hurt? Or I know for me, if I'm nervous, I can't eat. So it's definitely all related.
No question.
I mean, it's really mind blowing that more people don't acknowledge how important breath is. I mean, when we think about it, we've got these holes right here in the front of our face that are there specifically so that we can be able to get air in and air out. So it's an important part of life. I know you can live without water for days. You can live without food for really months as long as you're drinking water. But when it comes to air, how long can you live without it? Not
Not
very
very
long.
long. Yeah.
Uh-uh. And so I think there's a lot of people walking around, and not even from the psychological component to what it is that you've been sharing, but also just a physiologic component to it. I mean, can you speak a little bit to, I mean, what are some of the physiologic benefits that people see just from doing breath work? That's the first part of the question. And then the second part of the question is, then obviously there's benefits to this. How often should somebody be doing breath work?
Okay, good question. So the first part around the physiological, so the way that I see it is around your feeling of aliveness. So the breath is directly connected to your willingness to experience the full spectrum of aliveness. So what I always say happens for people is, as you move through life and you have certain traumas happen or certain experiences happen, what we will do is we'll kind of shrink our capacity for aliveness or for life because we're afraid of doing something that feels uncomfortable or getting hurt again or experiencing something that was painful to us again. So then we only do certain things that we know are not going to create that experience, right? So we kind of live in this like little container where we only do the things that we feel comfortable with. But what that does is it shrinks your capacity for aliveness. So as you start to breathe and you heal some of the unprocessed trauma and you start to reconcile that, your capacity for aliveness starts to grow again, and you are now willing and you have the space to experience more and more of everything, more of more breath, more of what life has to offer, more love, more money, more joy, whatever it is. So it expands your capacity for more and more aliveness in general. And then also there are physical benefits too, right? To having more oxygen coming in, like people will feel just like they have more energy, they will sleep better. That's a really big one that it helps a lot of people with, is sleep and just relaxing the nervous system in general. That's a huge thing for people, is being stressed out and having a nervous system that's in fight or flight all the time. So the breath will pretty much immediately take you out of fight or flight. So that's a huge thing too. And then as far as how often, it really depends. So if you're doing something on your own, like for example, if you download the audio that I'm going to share with you, I would say, you could do that, 2 or 3 times a week. But then eventually, if you do want to go deeper with it, you do want to get support and work with somebody, because then you can really get the support and someone to hold the space for you to go deeper, because there's only so much you can do on your own. So, I would say if you're doing it on your own, 2 or 3 times a week, but then eventually you probably want to decide like, okay, if I want to go deeper with this, I probably want to get support in some capacity.
Yeah, I think that's huge that you said that, because when you start digging and going even deeper, a lot of, we're programmed as human beings to move away from pain or to move away from fear. So it's like if you're trying to do that on your own, as soon as that, that right side of your brain that's all the feeling and the emotions and all that stuff, it's like, I definitely don't want to go there. And doing it on your own, you give yourself permission and all of the excuses as why that's probably not going to be a good idea for you. So I see a huge benefit in working with somebody like you one-on-one, because you can hold them accountable so that they don't, move away from that fear, because so much of the healing happens when you actually lean into that fear. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times too, I'll be able to see things that just people wouldn't see on their own. And it goes for everyone. Like I have been doing this for so long, but when I'm in a state or I'm triggered, like I don't know what's going on. I need someone to tell me. So that's a huge thing too, is just having someone who is observing and also trained to be able to see things that you can't, and that's another piece of it too. But about the hard, yes, I totally agree with you. You will get benefits doing it on your own. You probably will feel more relaxed. You might tap into creativity in a new way. You might have new awarenesses or new ideas. But when it comes to really walking through some of those harder emotions and deeper things to face, you definitely want to get support around that.
So, okay. So where can our listeners that want to, start to do something on their own, where can they get that download that you're talking about?
So if you just go to my website, AlyseBreathes.com, you can sign up for it right there on the homepage. Okay. Also on my Instagram, you can sign up at Alyse_breathes. Either one of those places are a great place to go.
And we'll make sure we put that in the show notes as well, so that we'll have that link directly over to that. That way people can be able to reach you. And thank you so much for giving our audience the ability to get that free download. So that's appreciated. I know I can't wait to take a look at it myself. And before we leave and before we wrap up, one of the questions that we love to ask the people that we talk to, because everybody's got a different perspective on what this, what it is for them. But Alyse, how would you define for you and for the work that you do, how would you define living your life happy, healthy?
I love that question. So for me, a lot of it is just around my outlook on life and really doing things that I enjoy. And then another thing that I really value is learning new things and challenging myself. I just started I've learned a lot of, I used to do Ashtanga yoga really intensely, and when I was younger, I did softball really intensely. So I like being disciplined with something, and I just started learning this ancient Indian martial art that's really hard. And doing things like that challenge me and create this level of discipline and awareness and, being a beginner, I think that is really valuable in just continuing to evolve and also, being open to expanding yourself all the time.
Yeah, that's the word that was coming to my mind as you were talking is actually there was two words. Number one being expansion, but another one that I was thinking is that I know people that are listening may feel the same way, but I'm inspired to be a better person even after having this conversation, which is interesting because of what the word inspire means, right? It's God breathed, or to breathe, to be able to breathe in. And that's what we're talking about today.
Oh, I love that.
So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. For the listeners, go to AlyseBreathes.com, get more information about Alyse and what she's doing. Thank you so much for what it is that you're doing to make an impact in the world, to be able to help people live happier, healthier lives. And as always, like the show, share it, comment, 5-star review, help us to be able to impact more lives.
Thank you, Alyse.
Awesome. Thank you.
Y'all have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Happy Healthy Life podcast. If you enjoy the show, make sure to follow them on Instagram at the H2 Life or on YouTube and Facebook at the Happy Healthy Guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.